Hello and welcome to Opinions. We have John Wedger with us. John, ex-police detective from the Met, and he's recently, welcome John.
That's a pleasure.
Been on you've been everywhere, television interviews, recording, radio.
Yeah, I've just come straight from Belfast.
Yes, you have.
Direct over to here.
Yeah.
You know, it was interesting over there, but yeah, it's been a busy time.
All right, we're in Marbella and we're giving him a bit of R&R. A bit of rest and...
I've got 12 hours sleep last night. 12 hours sleep I got last night. Yeah.
Last night, yeah. First time for ever that. Yeah. And he's been through the Hope big time for years. And how he survived, well, he's going to tell you. When did it all start?
Oh, well, the longer story, it really started when I joined the police in the beginning of the 1990s. I was expecting a successful career, really. I had ideas of progressing through the ranks and doing well, but God had different plans for me. And it was the main changing point was really when I started looking into child abuse offences, and that's when.
Did you volunteer for this?
No, never. I had no interest in any investigation involving child abuse or paedophilia. None whatsoever. It was always put upon me. So as much as I wanted to try to avoid it, it kept coming to get me.
Was this a special unit created by the police?
Yeah, I was on 3 special units that had governance for child abuse investigations. And each one of them, on 3 occasions, I had uncovered huge child abuse, rings, prostitution rings, cover-ups, started to occur on each single occasion, and I was silenced on each single occasion.
Hang on, cover-ups. You were told to lay off?
Yeah, I mean, the bigger story is that around the beginning of the 2000s, I was asked to look into an investigation to transient paedophiles. So, I mean, really my career went without incident. I was doing very well. I sort of moved into the CID department very early on, and it's an area of policing that I wanted to continue with. I liked it. I liked the ability to work on my own. I loved the work that detectives did. It was more sort of brain teasing than anything else. I struggled with discipline. Uniform policing back then was very regimented. Even when you join the police, they say it's a civilian force, but all the training was done by the ex-military. The guards would take you for marching. Right. The PE staff were from the Army Physical Training Department. So
does that make you a bit of a rebel, a la Sweeney?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because the Sweeney was abolished because too many detectives were copying their mythology.
Oh, right.
And it was causing problems. So, but it was based on real-life detectives. Yeah. And then, the new ones coming through the ranks were really sort of mimicking Jack Regan. And you'd go into a lot of CID offices and there would always be a picture of Jack Regan, and more recently, Gene Hunt. There was pictures of Gene Hunt started coming in from Life on Mars. So there was always this sort of affinity, this renegade cop.
Rough and tough, against the wall.
Yeah, that people really warmed to, naturally wanted to be like. A hard man with a heart, hard drinking, hard fighting, and there were so many that really sort of aspired to that. For me, I just liked the lifestyle. It was good. Your brain was constantly active, and it was crazy times, and I really enjoyed it. But on a personal level, at the same time, my ex-missus had left me, and she left me with 4 children to bring up. So I had this conflict going on with wanting to make a big career, but then also balancing it.
What happens with the police force? This is, normal, unfortunately, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, normally what happens is it's the man that sort of puts a job before his family, and ends up the wife leaves him, and she takes the kids. And there was a care order put in because she didn't have the ability to care for them, and because we weren't married, that the kids were going to go into the care system. And at the same time, I just started to look into sex offences, care homes, paedophiles, and realised that care isn't the word that's really applicable. They get anything other than care in these institutions. So really, over my dead body were them kids going anywhere. So I really had to balance everything. And luckily I was a young fit lad back then, and I could, you know, physically put up with the demands. I didn't sleep much. It was long hours at work, and then I would rush in, look after my children. And there was also a financial burden that came with that, because there was just one wage. I had a mortgage. And really, it was bizarre because I had more in common with the people I was bringing through the custody suite door than those I was working with.
Sorry.
Because a lot of the people there, they had dual income and no children. So they could be bringing in net 100 grand a year with the overtime. Whereas me, I was more down the bottom ends of the 20 grand a year. You know, so I could understand social problems a lot more. I understood what it was to be a single parent. I understood what it was like to be skint.
Can you cope as a single parent? Is there any, because at the moment single parents are almost, oh well, they're heroes.
Yeah, I'm going to say something which might upset people, but what I want to say here, Rodney, is that the battle I'm involved in now is to end child abuse and the cover-ups that go with it. And it's the kids that are the prominent factor here. If adults are offended by anything I say, I'm really going to be horrible and say, actually, get over it, don't care. My intention is not to offend anyone, but you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs, as they say. And when it comes to the argument to single parenting work, it gives them love, if you're a loving person, and it gives them stability, but it's unbalanced. I could not fulfill the matriarchal role because I'm a man. I did my best. I cooked, I cleaned, I ironed, and if they were hurt, I cuddled them like any loving parent would. But I didn't have that feminine touch. And you know, these are boys, they need a mum, because also they need that femininity to balance them emotionally, but also they need a good feminine role model. So they need to know to respect a woman. But if there is no woman and everything that they have in contact with a woman is negative, like an abusive mother, then they're going to gravitate towards abusive, negative people in the future. And it's the same with the other way round, if it's a woman with no man. Now my house needs a feminine touch, you know, without a doubt. And again, if there's the absence of a man, you know, as much as women, you know, there's women that can adapt to so much, and you know, and I'm not sort of going into that sort of argument with it, but you know, there's things that men do, and men do good, you know, maintenance, and it's good for a girl to have a father, so she can again respect a man and the positive attributes of a caring, loving man. Not an abusive parent, obviously, you know, and if there is an abusive parent, then they should be removed. And then we do have this single parenting, you know, but I think...
Now, they should be removed. This is an area of contention at the moment, isn't it? Social services can come in and remove children and do so, it is alleged, without due care.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with some lovely social workers that genuinely care for the children. I've been personally through the family court system for 4 years, and everyone has their own experiences. At the time I was going through the family court, it was horrendously biased towards women, and it was. The judges were, I would say, appalling, bar one judge, and I went through about 5 judges in my 4 years going through the family court proceedings. It was a male judge. And many, many years later, when I was investigating a horrendous child abuse case that had gone to trial at Wood Green Crown Court, the judge there, on his summing up, he mentioned about abuse and how when abuse stops on a child, the court is now stating it's a place of safety and that the kid can move on. And what he turned around and said, as the officer knows, that when a kid is removed from an abusive background and all that, there's still a lot of damage and there's still a lot of repairing needs to be done. It continues through to adults and beyond, and the officer knows that. And he looked at me and he smiled, and it was the same judge that was really sort of positive towards me in the family court. And the guy had a lovely, kind heart, and he understood the value of a family and a loving family. But, you know, I would like to have a balanced family home life, which would allow me to go out to be the breadwinner and then come home and be with my children. But that didn't happen. And unfortunately, I was pushed into a position of single parenting. and I say God bless all single parents. You know, do as best as you can, but it will never be perfect. And you know, I don't mean to upset them, and if it's not their own fault, then that's how it is. Unfortunately, our society is so badly broken that it promotes single parenting, and it's wrong.
Promotes?
What it does is that in no way it's sort of normalising it, right, as it were, you know? And we saw a lot, especially during the 80s, when single parents were given housing, and then there was a lot of refugees. And I'm not saying these things are there for a purpose, because there are bad people that hurt. But if it can be avoided, it should be avoided, because it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't work. Yeah. You know, but a child needs a loving, safe environment, free from harm. And whatever aspect that comes in, then God bless it, let that continue. Yeah.
So that's your priority in all this, and you've been involved. Well, you were involved in Baby P, which was the original case that highlighted so much. Horrendous story.
And any officer that has worked in the remit of child abuse investigations, when Baby P came up, they would, throughout the country, would have said, but what about Baby J, Baby K, Baby F? Baby P was one of so many. It was not uncommon. It happens all the time. It was just one that hit the public hard, you know. And the other thing we got to look at is that when we look at failings, there's a lot of conspiracies come out around any failing, that it's caused by the Masons, it's caused by corrupt social workers and things like that. You know, when you look at overall failings, 80% of aviation catastrophes occur because of human error, not because of mechanical error or electronic, human error. And it'll be the same in all these child abuse investigation failings. You know, what we can't overlook is laziness. We can't overlook snobbery. You know, I knew of a case where there was a huge failing. A kid was failed because the officer, she had come back from maternity leave and had a child at home and didn't want to go into a house for an assessment because the house was dirty and she thought she might catch scabies. Right. So did the assessment from afar and didn't do a proper assessment. So you've got snobbery and judgmental attitudes, which goes back to what I was saying earlier, when I had more in common with those I was bringing through the custody suite doors than those I was working with. And I think that was a good grounding for me.
But with Baby P, I mean, that was extreme, wasn't it? I mean, this the guy came in after the husband departed, and it was horrendous what he was doing, and the social workers, the medics, just, you know, didn't do anything.
And out of all of that, they call it a Part 8 review. It was like a Home Office sanctioned review goes on. Everything is seized and this team come in and they review the evidence.
Now, you were part of this because you did an interview.
I did an interview with the mum. I was the only officer to be praised for his actions and diligence in that. And I don't mean to be conceited, it's just, it's a fact. I was the only one that didn't get away with it, that did not get criticised. And my investigation, my part in the interview, was deemed as incredibly thorough. And
you extracted the truth.
Yeah, and I would say the mother was a very, very dangerous woman. And she was a danger to that child, and I did bring that to the attention of my senior officer. This woman is a danger. And I then said her house needs to be searched, and I was obstructed in getting a warrant to search that house. Right? And it did come out later that that house should have been searched, and that was highlighted to me. No, she was not a good woman at all, and it was clear, anyone who dealt with her, that there would be this initial veneer, because she was an intelligent woman, you know, she knew how to manipulate the system.
6 years, not long enough?
Well, it's never long enough if you're going to do that. And it's not only that, what did that child endure that will never come out?
You can't imagine.
You know, when a child is abused, two people know about it. One of them's a child and one of them's the abuser. You know, and it's the same with all these investigations. And this is what I really want to highlight as a failing in our system, is that when you get journalists put a story out, a journalist needs two independent corroborative sources before they act. A police officer would work on a rumour. Now, I'd say that I've always worked on a rumour, and it's never betrayed me. And I said to a journalist once, if you had to go to work and your wife has to go to work, which is the case now, unfortunately, in society, you know, we can't have stay-at-home parents anymore, and I believe that's deliberate. And
Deliberate?
Yeah, I believe that they're deliberately doing it to stop the kids having a nice sort of functioning home life, you know, having the mother.
Who?
I would say governmental level, you know.
Why would they do that?
I think they would do that to bring a breakdown in society.
To the advantage of who?
I really don't know. I mean, who benefits from dysfunctionality? Why would anyone want to cover up child abuse? Why would anyone want, you know, disaffection in society? You know, it's incredibly nefarious. And if I'll just get back to that, but I'll come because there's something I want to mention, which is being mentioned to me consistently by victims of abuse, and it's something that is being really neglected and deliberately ignored by the mainstream media. And I am actually being steered away from mentioning it, and that is SRA, satanic ritual abuse. And this is an elephant that is in the living room, and I think this elephant is so big there's just no room left in the living room, if that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of people, of course, will not believe in Satan, his existence. They've read a lot of books maybe, and it's okay for the novels.
Yeah, Dennis Wheatley and things like that.
But it doesn't really exist.
Yeah, I know. So if we're heading towards an atheistic society, and sort of organised religion hasn't done itself any favours. You know, we have seen the scandals that have come out in the Catholic institutes in Southern Ireland, and we have seen failings in the care systems that have been sanctioned by both the Protestant faith and the Catholic faith over here. And we've seen it in it. What I'm saying it's across the board. Paedophilia and in effect Satanism, because any act of sexual abuse on a child is an act of evil. It's probably the biggest secret societies there are. You know, this transgresses everything else. Paedophilia brings together members of society that would never normally meet. You know, never the twain shall meet with these people. And it is amalgamating them, and it has done probably for generations. But on a lighter note, what I'm saying is, as much as it's done that to them, this is bringing us together, the truth seekers, the ones that want to crush this. I am working with victims and survivors of abuse. My telephone, probably by the end of the day, would have had 100 messages, and they will come from whistleblowers, from the NHS, from local authority, from the police service. I'm getting a lot of soldiers coming to me, ex-veterans, you know, telling me their stories. I'm getting people from the criminal classes, the middle classes, the lower classes, the ruling classes. I've had a peer come to me about abuse, and it's consistent. What happens to people is consistent, and it is everywhere. So it is amalgamating us, and we are working with such fluidity and compassion, you know, and hopefully it will continue. We will continue to grow and grow and grow.
I mean, you've been abused by the police situation.
Well, it was classed independently as torturous.
Right.
And we've got to look at police suicides. The Brits keep no stats on police suicides. We had to look to America. They've got more of an open attitude towards things. And police suicides are recorded. And a very, very similar city to London in its population, its racial structure, its demographics, its wealth, is Boston on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Boston has suicides amongst police are twice that of any other high-risk occupation. So even things that were deemed as high risk, you know, like people high up in the financial, farmers.
Were you trained, John, to, before you went into this delicate area, how to protect yourself psychologically?
No, there is no training. When you go into child abuse, you are psychometrically tested to make sure you're not, as I would say, a wrong 'un. I think it's an inexact science because these kids have been let down by many, many officers in these remits. Every 6 months you're subject to a psychological assessment. Now, this assessment, you think it's there to help you, it's not. It's not to stop you from working in a very toxic, damaging arena. It's actually there to keep you in there, right? And child abuse investigations are the most, how would I put this? The majority, in my opinion, and in my findings, since I've left the police as a whistleblower and connecting with so many people from the mental health services, through the military, you know, other officers that have left, and these stats keep coming to me. When you look at the deterioration in society, you can attribute most of it to child abuse, child traumatic backgrounds. 90% of all adult mental health referrals come from child traumatic backgrounds. It is at the root cause of so much.
And how many generations does this go on?
Well, they reckon if a child's abused, then that will continue for 3 generations. And if you see then that the public purse, what it has to pick up on, you know, social services, intervention, the court system, I mean, this, when we're saying about sort of reining in expenses, the judges still get paid a huge amount of money. You know, the solicitors, although they have curtailed legal aid, the barristers are still getting a good purse. You know, how much money are they gleaning from this? The medical profession, when people are medicated, when they're interned in secure units, you know, and then the damage it causes through toxicity, through people taking heroin, crack cocaine, alcoholism, tobacco, all these things that are there to sort of subdue and suppress the feelings that this person's got inside.
Would you say this is a bit of an industry? One hears awful
Massively,
stories
hugely.
when a report is written by a psychologist, for instance, and he gets paid £7,000 for that. My goodness me.
I know. And I once got a legal statement through, and they'd even put in an email sent £50, phone call received £20, you know. And who regulates it? At that time with legal aid, they were regulating themselves. So they would adjudicate if they were subject to legal aid. Now, if a person couldn't pay legal aid, they wouldn't get any money. So it was in their benefit for that person to get legal aid. And then once they got legal aid, then it all starts ticking away. And if you was, say, a building contractor, and you went round to do an estimate, and you spent an hour doing an estimate, and then you faxed through the estimate, and then you called them to say the estimate's coming through. If then you sent them a bill for £700 for an hour's work, then £50 for an email, and then £20 for the phone call, they call the police on you. But they do it, and they're allowed to do it. And all the time, no one is breaking the circle. No one is putting the money where it's needed, and that is in helping the victims and survivors of abuse, stopping them from going on then to become dysfunctional and abusive parents, absent parents, drug addicts, heroin addicts. And again, I want to say to people, I'm here to help. I'm not here to denigrate. I'm not here to rubbish victims of abuse. The government are doing that to you. I'm not. I'm here to stop this. And then when I go back to the people that know about abuse, the one who's doing it and the one who's getting it done to them, people don't abuse someone on the top deck of a bus at rush hour with hundreds of victims, right? It's done covertly. It's done in private. And then the victim then goes on to have a very troubled life, gets involved in taking drugs and alcohol, then gets involved in crime. To fund that might then shoplift. A lot of them find it difficult to keep down a job because they see a boss as a position of abuse and power, you know. And then they get tarred as a person of bad character legally. So when they do make an allegation, when they have an epiphany and think, stop, enough, I've suffered enough, report their abuser, the court system then legitimately attacks them as a damaged, bad character person. And they're the victim. And
let me go into you a little bit from this point of view. I mean, would you say you'd suffered a breakdown because of the...
I got diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. If I could sort of explain how I got to this situation, the timeline to this, because what the police put me through, when the story is heard, you know, the opinions come across that it's quite unbelievable. And I want the people to know this is what the British police at a very senior chief constable commissioner level are doing knowingly, and they're doing it willingly, and they're doing it unabated. and no one is regulating them, right? And it causes, the punishment is so bad, there are people that are pushed to suicide.